Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Carving It Up MLB Opening Day Show. I am Bryson Carver, as always, and I was just telling our co-host, who I'm going to have on just a second, I don't think I've ever had this much anxiety, pent up over this wild MLB offseason that we had. But I think it's this. My emotions are kind of perfectly summed up in a tweet. I put this back about a month ago once the news broke. Let's just, for good measure, let's put up the Jeff Passan tweet from a month ago. Major League Baseball, MLB Players Association have reached a tentative agreement on a new labor deal. While it still needs to be ratified by both parties, it is expected to be a formality. And when it is, baseball is back. And baseball is back tomorrow, opening day, April 7th. Man, it is going to be fun. Let me bring on my first guest. He is the host of the Metropolitan Report, Alfred Parsard Jr. How you doing, my man? How you feeling?
Glad to be here and glad baseball is back. I'm excited. Thursday just can't come fast enough.
No, it can't. No, it can't. It's gonna be fun. But I'm telling you, I've never had this much anxiety, man. It's crazy because I think your Mets are gonna be better. Postseason, we'll find that out in just a second, at least with my predictions, and we'll get yours in just a moment. But let's bring on an arch rival of both of our teams. That would be the host of Guido's Gridiron Blitz, Mike Guido, is joining Carving It Up Live, the MLB Opening Day show. Mike, how you doing?
I'm okay, guys. I'm okay. I take great pride in being your two arch nemesis. I don't know, whatever.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Listen, we're gonna get into the Yankees literally in just a second because the AL East I'm going to dive into first. We'll do the American League, the three divisions, then the National League, the three divisions, and then how the three of us think that the postseason is going to shake out. I guess based off of where I have it. It is my show, for what it's worth. But I'll start with you, Alfred. What's sort of your expectations? Give me a team that you think people are maybe a little bit overhyping a bit, and give me a team that you feel is flying under the radar.
Overhyped, I want to go with this is going to sound weird, but overhyped Los Angeles Dodgers. Underhyped, I don't feel enough people are talking about the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay, what about you, Mike?
I think overhyped. You're not going to like me, and I know you're not going to like me, but I do think that people are overhyping the Boston Red Sox a little bit. I think that there's a lot of question marks about Trevor Story being outside of Colorado in those splits, and I'm not certain how consistent their pitching staff is going to be, especially with Chris Sale out. So. Yes. I think overhyped. I think people are giving the Red Sox a little bit too much credit to this point. Underhyped. I am 100% with Alfred on this one. I think the St. Louis Cardinals are a real team this year. They've got, I think, some of the best young talent, especially in the lineup in the league. Dylan Carlson, Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader, guys like that. Those are real players. And I think people underestimate the impact that Albert Pujols will have on that team. So I'm with Alfred 100% on that. I think the Cardinals are going to be for real this year.
I agree with y'all both on the Cardinals. That's a three-man sweep. I'm going to give you a team that y'all may not like this. I guess we'll like it, Mike, because it's a team within our division. I think people are overhyping the Toronto Blue Jays. I get the offseason additions they've made. They feel a little bit like last year's Padres. And again, you got the young superstar. And obviously they got other young players, on from there, and their pitching staff has gotten better. But can they stay healthy? Obviously, I think Toronto's the last city that's still got the vaccine thing going. And so how's that going to impact the Toronto Blue Jays? We'll find out. But if y'all are ready to go, let's dive right into the American League East. Hold on, let me put this banner down. This is where I've got the AL East standings shaking out. So I disagree with you, Mike, on the Red Sox. I think they'll win 94 games. I do agree with you on the fact that obviously Chris Sale being out, that's news that came a pretty tough blow to me as a Sox fan. But I think the bullpen is going to be slightly better. The addition of Trevor Story, I will say this. A lot of people have the same concerns about Nolan Arenado when he left Colorado, and DJ LeMahieu as well. Remember, DJ LeMahieu leaves Colorado, goes to the Yankees, and had that unbelievable 2019 season. I think it's going to be more the same for Trevor Story. They're putting him at second. The infield is unbelievable, along with Bogarts and Rafael Devers, who has been raking in spring training. I think you look at Nathan Eovaldi, who I think it's fair to say is an ace. He's done a great job since he's gotten to Boston. Defensively, you added Jackie Bradley Jr., who came back. Tampa Bay, I got Tampa Bay winning 92 games. They obviously won over 100 last year. I think analytics are when you have the right guys around you, and especially the young team that they do have, I think it can help them get to the postseason once again. I believe now this would be the 4th consecutive year. Toronto, I have winning 92 games as well, but Tampa gets the tiebreaker. I'm not as high in your Yankees, Mike, 89 wins. I think their offense is going to be excellent as always. But once again, I have questions about the pitching staff. They really didn't do much to address that in the offseason, and Baltimore's Baltimore. They're an absolute train wreck. So what's y'all's thoughts, starting with you, Mike, since, we are AL East team fans? What's your thoughts on my prediction for this year's division?
Well, I think something that's really important to point out is that this division, as competitive as it's going to be, is going to be really tough to call early on. I think you're right. I think any of these 4 teams that are at the top, Baltimore not included, could easily win this division by the time the year comes around. But I do think, like I said, I'm going to revert to what I said before. I do think the Red Sox right now are getting a little bit too much credit. And I actually think, and I know it sounds biased, but I actually don't think the Yankees are getting enough credit, because I know the Yankees didn't have the offseason that they wanted. And I believe me, I'm in pain when it comes to talking about this. But when you look at the areas where they've improved, Josh Donaldson, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Ben Rortvedt, guys like that, they are drastically improved defensively. They were not a great defensive team last year. I think they have more versatility within their lineup. You can move guys around more. You've seen Josh Donaldson hitting the leadoff spot in spring training for the Yankees this year. But I think it's tough. I think as of right now, I think you have something going here with the Blue Jays. I'm so bought into their pitching staff. I mean, Gausman, Barrios, Ryu, Manoah, Kikuchi. I mean, they have a ridiculous rotation that I think in this division, as strong as it is going to play incredibly well. The way that I have it seating out, I would have Toronto, the Yankees, Tampa Bay, Boston, and then Baltimore. But again, it's such a tough division to call, because I believe that all 4 of those teams, and you pretty much have it, all 4 of those top teams are capable of winning 90-plus games, and maybe even 95-plus games. So it's tough to call here, I think.
Well, it's definitely the tightest division without a question in the American League. I think it's obviously, you mentioned the 4 teams outside of the Orioles, without a question have a shot. And that's the reason I only had the Red Sox winning around 94 games, because I think all 4 of these teams are just going to be beating up on each other.
Yeah.
And so in my standings, you'll see I've got the Red Sox, obviously with the division win being the 3 seed in the playoffs. So what's your reaction to my AL East, Alfred?
Don't count the Yankees out. I'm surprised you have them in 4th. Like Mike Guido said, you have Josh Donaldson tearing up spring. Here now, I know spring training doesn't count for a lot, but just listen to these statistics. If the Yankees in this spring training have 5 of their big bats batting all over 300, Donaldson, Stanton, Judge, among the 3 of them. They blew out the Braves 10-0 yesterday, and they look to be in midseason form already. Now, will that translate over when on opening day when they play Boston? I don't know. But to have the Yankees 4th in that division, here's my thing. I think that the hype around the Blue Jays is based on what they will become in the future and not what they are now. Of course, because you have 3 guys who all had 3 big league dads, 2 of which were Hall of Famers. But I don't think that they're there yet as far as potential. And I'm talking about Guerrero Jr., Biggio, and Bichette. And, of course, you throw George Springer in there. A lot of people are forgetting the Blue Jays lost Marcus Semien in the offseason. Marcus Semien went over to the Texas Rangers. And even though they didn't make the playoffs last year, Marcus Semien was a big reason why they were still in the mix down to the last week of the season. As far as a team in this division that I think will regress, I think the Rays are going to regress. Yes, okay. they have Wander Franco. Yes, they have a young blue chipper in Vidal Brujan. But I think Randy Arozarena and crew and G-Man Choi and the rest of those guys, I don't see them holding up, because out of all the teams in the division, not counting Baltimore because they're not competitive whatsoever, but they didn't improve. The Red Sox got Trevor Story. I think the Yankees made a great move in trading away Gary Sanchez, and out of all the acquisitions that Mike named, the one he didn't name That's the biggest defensive help is Marwin Gonzalez. So I think this division is going to be between the Yankees and the Red Sox. I think Toronto finishes third. I'm going to put the Rays in fourth, and of course Baltimore in the cellar.
I feel you, and obviously you mentioned Franco, who signed, I believe, a pretty massive deal to stay with Tampa for over a decade. I loved what I saw from him and a Rosarina in the postseason. Certainly a Rosarina the last 2 years. Get him into October, and he's dynamite. Both with his bat and defensively. I see where you're coming from, Mike, in terms of the Yankees, obviously, and I trust me. I followed your Twitter feed these last few months, and the emotions you went through in the Freddie Freeman sweepstakes. It was it was painful. I genuinely felt bad for you, and that's coming from a Red Sox fan. But obviously, we know, listen, Toronto didn't get worse, Tampa Bay didn't get worse. The thing about Toronto is obviously they win 90 games last year. It comes down the wire, but people forget they got off to a pretty rocky start at the start of 2021. Will that happen again? This season we'll see, but that's where I stand in the AL East. So let's move on now to the AL Central. I think we would all agree this is one team's division to lose, and that'd be the Chicago White Sox, who I have winning this division, followed by the Minnesota Twins, the Cleveland Guardians, the Detroit Tigers, and the Kansas City Royals. I think Chicago speaks for itself. The pitching is unbelievable. They did lose Craig Kimbrell, but you look at the Twins adding Carlos Correa, who was the other big name in the market, along with Freddie Freeman. The Cleveland Guardians, people forget about Cleveland. Before Terry Francona had to take his leave of absence, they were in the wild card chase up until about the last month and a half. So I think they'll at least be competitive. Detroit's getting better year by year. Kansas City's not there yet. What's y'all's thoughts, starting with you this time, Alfred, on the AL Central standings? Real quick, I know me and you both, we were in love with the White Sox until they, pretty much got bounced by Houston.
Well, I think the White Sox, I agree with you. It is their division to lose. I'll tell you why. They out of all 5 teams in the AL Central, I believe they have the best lineup. And when healthy, that's a dangerous lineup. You have Tim Anderson, who was a batting champion a couple of years back. You have Jose Abreu, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, if he could get a full season in, who's supposed to be a phenom. A lot of people don't realize this, but they needed outfield help, so they flipped Kimbrel for A.J. Pollock, who was a good bat coming off of the Dodgers. Yasmani Grandal, if he can be back in top form. That switch hitting, power hitting catcher. So, and of course, they're managed by the one of our favorite guys, and I use that term loosely, Tony La Russa. But and then the rotation. Now, here's the thing: they did lose Carlos Rodon, which is a significant loss, but they still have Lucas Giolito. So they didn't lose all of their pitching power. But I think it's the White Sox division to lose. The Minnesota Twins probably could make a push for a wild card. I don't know how Gary Sanchez is going to fit in that offense. Maybe a change of scenery to a smaller market will help him. But of course, they still have Byron Buxton. They now have Carlos Correa. They still have Jorge Polanco, who's very underrated in my opinion as a second baseman and an infield utility guy. So I think the Twins, they could have a bounce back year. The Cleveland Guardians. The thing that gets me about the Guardians, Jose Ramirez is great, a great overall player. Shane Bieber, of course, he's a phenom on the mound. And a lot of people forget that Emmanuel Clase came into prominence last season as a closer. James Karinchak as well. But a lot of people, see the problem with Cleveland is the youth. It's too much of a youth movement there. I don't see them staying in contention in the long run. I'm actually going to disagree with you about the Detroit Tigers. I don't think that they improve on last year at all. And the Royals are the Royals. They're the basement dweller of the Central.
Well, I mean, it's crazy. Kansas City winning the World Series just 6-7 years ago, and they haven't made the playoffs since. And to your point about Cleveland and Shane Bieber, I do have Shane Bieber as my AL Cy Young winner. I think he's going to have an unbelievable season. The thing about Detroit is obviously you add my man Eduardo Rodriguez from the Red Sox. I did not want to lose him. He goes to Detroit, and you add Javi Baez. Now, Javi Baez has not been the same guy, going back to around the 2018 season. But can he bounce back in Detroit? I think it's highly possible. What's your thoughts, Mike, on my AL Central standings?
I think it's no question, and I think you guys both got it right, that this is definitely the White Sox division to lose. They clearly have the best roster out of all the teams in this division. They might be the best team in the American League to this point. I think Alfred brings up a good point. Losing Carlos Rodon is a big, big loss. But again, you still have two, workhorses at the top of that rotation with Lucas Giolito and Lance Lynn that I don't think are going to really waver this year. Plus, they've got a bunch of good arms: Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, guys like that. I think they can, work around losing Rodon a little bit. However, I do think that people are underrating the Detroit Tigers a little bit. Now, I'm not certain that they are any better than what you have them as, Bryson, because I think around 500 is a decent spot for them. And I really think that they have one of the more exciting young groups of talent that they have in the entire major leagues. You're going to see Riley Green come up this year, who's a top 8 prospect in Major League Baseball. You're going to Spencer Torkelson might be the best overall offensive hitting prospect in baseball right now. He's starting the season with the Tigers this year. So I do think that there's an influx of young talent, guys like Akil Baddoo, a bunch of young pitching, Matt Manning, Casey Mize, guys like that. I think that's going to be really interesting for them. I do think Cleveland is going to take a big step back. I am not in love with their roster, and it wouldn't surprise me if they ended up trading Jose Ramirez. Please do not let it be to the Blue Jays. But I do think Cleveland's going to take a big step back. Bieber will do his thing, but outside of that, I just don't see them producing offensively. And you could do worse with the pitching staff. But again, the White Sox are going to be the class of this division. I do think Minnesota is the clear number 2 team. They're going to hit. They're going to hit. They really are. And I think their pitching will hold up at least decent enough to get them into a wild card spot. This is a relatively weak division. I believe Kansas City is definitely in last place here. It wouldn't surprise me if guys like Whit Merrifield get traded. It wouldn't surprise me if Jorge Soler got traded at some point. So, it's stuff like this that we got to have to watch out for. Again, also in the middle of the season, I would say I agree with you completely, Bryson. I would maybe switch the Guardians and the Tigers, but other than that, I think it's pretty much dead on.
I appreciate that. I think obviously Jose Ramirez, we know that, I think a few years ago, he was very much in the running to win the American League MVP award. And you look at guys, like Kansas City, for example, Whitney Merrifield, he's a guy who's year after year been an all-star, year after year been consistent, but obviously playing in a small market, playing on a team that's not even come close to contention, since 2015. I think you add him to a contender, and that's, that'd be massive for them. Transitioning now, last division, the American League. Let's go to the AL West. Again, I think this is a division that's, in terms of the winner, fairly easy to predict. Going with the Houston Astros to win 99 games. And what it all comes down to is the return of Justin Verlander. I think his return is going to be massive. Yes, you lose Carlos Correa. You still got Jose Altuve. You still got Yordan Alvarez. You still got Alex Bregman. So they're going to – the bats in that lineup is going to be unbelievable. Their young pitching I thought was unbelievable last year, especially in the ALCS and in spurts in the World Series. I've got Seattle winning 93 games. They came on the doorstep of the playoffs last year. They did not regress this offseason. I want to buy into the LA Angels so bad because they do have probably the 2 best players in all of Major League Baseball. But that's about it. Does Anthony Rendon give you anything? And obviously the Rangers, no question, got better in the offseason, most notably with the signing of Corey Seager to that massive deal. And then the Oakland A's have just been a yard sale, for the last few months. So starting with you, Mike, what's your thoughts on my AL West standings?
I think they're pretty much right here. I think I agree with you. Oakland. Here's the thing about Oakland, and I think Alfred could probably appreciate this too. It would not surprise me if Oakland was incredibly bad this year, but it also wouldn't surprise me that they are better than everybody thinks they are, because that's exactly what they do. They are the Rays of the West. They are the cheap team that doesn't spend much on money, that doesn't spend much on players, but they always seem to find a way to not be a joke. That's just the way they are. Maybe they have something in Seth Brown. Maybe they have something in Stephen Piscotty and guys like that. Maybe all these guys kind of come together and play well. They just traded Sean Manaea today, so that's another knockoff. I would imagine they're going to trade Frankie Montas too. So, you have no idea where they're going to go. I think the Astros are probably the class of the division right now. However, I don't think that they're a 99, 100 win team. I just don't. I think they took I think they took a step back after losing Correa, losing Zach Greinke. As much as people think that that's not a big deal, that's a veteran presence in that rotation that's been around the league for a long time. I think that could have an effect on that entire pitching staff. But again, like I said, this is probably a 90, 95 win team. I think Seattle is up and coming. I'm not sure they're a 93 win team yet, but Seattle is going places. They absolutely are. This is a good team with a bunch of good players. The fact that they made that trade with Cincinnati that brought them Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez, I mean, what an embarrassment by Cincinnati. How they were able to pull that trade off is unbelievable. But it improved their roster drastically. Adding Robbie Ray is a big deal. This is not a terrible pitching staff either. So, and also something that we really need to keep in mind with Seattle as well, we are going to see Julio Rodriguez this year, who's the number 2 prospect in all. I'm sorry, not number 2. He's the number 3 prospect in all of baseball this year. So I think you have it right now, Bryson. Houston, Seattle, the Angels, I think, are exactly where they should be. They're going to be the 3rd place team, even though they might have the 2 best players in all of baseball with Ohtani and Mike Trout. And the Texas Rangers, who spent over $500 million in the offseason this year over the course of the contracts that they gave out over all their lengths. Yeah, I think they're a 4th place team as of right now. So I agree with you on this. I think this stacks up pretty well.
Yeah, and I think obviously the reason I got the Astros so high is because they have been, in this 1-2 seed spot in the American League for so long now. I do think the loss of Correa is big, but I think it's a loss that they're prepared for. I think this is a loss that they saw coming right from the beginning, probably of last season, to be honest with you. So, they still got guys in their prime, Bregman, Altuve, and again, I'll go back to it. Yordan Alvarez, every time, and I know the White Sox can attest to this. I can attest to this as a Red Sox fan. Every time he got up to bat, I was scared. He may hit that sucker, 450 plus. He's got a big bat. What's your thoughts on my predictions for the AL West, Alfred?
I agree with 1 and 2. I'm gonna flip 3 and 4. The Angels have been the team with the 2 most talked about players in all of baseball, but can't seem to translate that into wins. And on paper, they're not bad. When you look at their offense, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Anthony Rendon, and a lot of people forget about Jared Walsh too. Jared Walsh was the kid who came up and took Albert Pujols' spot at first base from him because he had that powerful showing late 2020 and early last season. My other thing is this: the Texas Rangers. Now they went ahead and they got Corey Seager. They went ahead and they got Marcus Semien. And a lot of people forget Adolis Garcia. He had a coming out party last season. He had a breakout year last year. If he can keep that up, that's a dangerous 2, 3, and 4, or 3, 4, and 5 in the lineup. As far as Seattle, toward the end of the season last season, they made a push. They were in the wild card mix. It's going to be interesting to see, just like how Mike said, Julio Rodriguez, who is a tremendous outfielder. I've been following him in Baseball America for the last couple of seasons. It's going to be interesting to see how he gets in the mix. If Jared Kelenic makes this roster on the opening day roster, it'll be interesting to see how he handles the big leagues from day one. Then, of course, they have Robbie Ray, Kyle Lewis, who was a former AL Rookie of the Year. So they have some great pieces. But the Astros are going to be the Astros. Yes, they lost Carlos Correa, but again, they still have Altuve. They still have Bregman, like we said. Yordan Alvarez when healthy, and then even guys like Litmus Diaz and Kyle Tucker are still are still bats. Kyle Tucker actually had a phenomenal year last year, all things considered. Yes, they lose Zach Greinke, but again, if Verlander comes back and can be the Justin Verlander that we all have come to know, rotation is still dangerous. So I think the Astros. I don't think the Astros will be a World Series contender, but this is their division.
That surprises me. You don't think they're a World Series contender? So let's sort of to put a bow on the American League. Who would you guys say? Put us all three in the frame here. Who would you guys say? I'll start with you, Alfred. Give me as many contenders as possible in the American League?
in the American League, contenders that I could see lifting the trophy: the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the White Sox.
That's it. Okay, go ahead, Mike. You're muted. You're muted.
My apologies. Like I said, you're not gonna like me. Like I said, I get you're probably ready to punch me in the face by now by how much I keep saying that the Red Sox are overrated. But I do agree. I think the Yankees are. I think the Yankees are for real. I think the White Sox are for real. I do think the Astros have a shot. I don't want to completely knock them out yet. But I am also I am going to give that little bit of a caveat to the Toronto Blue Jays. I think that people are giving them a little too much credit, but that pitching staff is nuts, and I think that lineup's going to hold up. So I would say that there's probably 4 legitimate contenders as of right now: Yankees, White Sox, Astros, and Blue Jays is where I see it right now.
I feel you, and obviously I vehemently disagree with you on one of them. But I think that my argument for Houston.
I'll say this. I'm predicting that the Red Sox are a little overrated. That doesn't mean they are. I mean, like I said before, this division is going to be nasty. It wouldn't surprise me at all if any of those 4 teams, excluding Baltimore, wins that division or wins 100 games. I mean, this is going to be a bloodbath of a division. It's going to be really fun to watch.
Oh, there's no question about it. It's going to be very fun to watch, and it's going to come down most likely, I would think, to the last 3-4 days of the regular season. Late September. So, I mean that's when baseball's at its best. My argument for Houston being contender and in my opinion, my predictions having the best record in the American League is that how much worse did they get with the loss of Correa? And then you bring back Justin Verlander. Now, Zach Greinke, you make a good point about him leaving, and I believe he went back to Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
He struggled in the postseason last year. Like he was not even close to where he was just 2-3 years ago, and he is getting up there in age. So my thing is the return of Verlander is going to make more of an impact than the loss of Correa, even though Correa is one of the 3-4 best shortstops in all of baseball. But yeah, I think in terms of contenders, I would say Red Sox. I hate to put Tampa in there, but they were just in the World Series 2 years ago, so I'll throw in Tampa because of their pitching and their young players. And then Astros, White Sox would round up my 4. But it's gonna be unbelievable. So let's transition now to the National League, starting with your division, Alfred, the NL East. And I believe the Braves once again will win the division, win 92 games. I probably am underrating them a bit, only having them at 92, because obviously you do lose Freddie Freeman, but you get Matt Chapman in return. So that's not the worst trade-off in the world. You obviously add to the fact that Ozzy Albies is back and Ronald Acuna coming back off injury. Philadelphia is big time this season, adding Kyle Schwarber, having the MVP Bryce Harper. Your Mets, I got at 88 wins. I was going to have them as a wild card team, Alfred, were it not for the loss of Jacob deGrom. And then obviously the Nationals got Juan Soto and not much else, and the Marlins are a joke. So starting with you, Alfred, what's your thoughts, since you are a Mets fan, on this division?
Well, the NL East, and for anybody who listened to the Metropolitan Report last season, I used to say it as a joke. I used to refer to the NL East as the NL Least. Of course, the Braves won 88 games last season, won the division, and went on to win the whole kit and caboodle. But this division is very scary and is very tough, and I'll tell you why. The A's went and got the Braves went and got Matt Olson from the A's.
Matt Olson, my bad. Not to interrupt you, Alpha. I said Matt Chapman. My bad.
Chapman went to the Blue Jays.
Yes, my bad.
But yeah, they went and got Matt Olson. They paid a steep price for Matt Olson because they gave up their top prospect, Christian Pache, to go get Matt Olson. But they went and got Matt Olson. Marcell Ozuna returns from his administrative leave, and he was a dangerous bat. Again, they re-signed Eddie Rosario. So the only real glaring loss is Jorge Soler, who ended up in the Marlins, but he's not gonna do anything there other than have individual numbers. Oh, and the Braves, I don't know why I keep saying the A's, but the Braves, they also have a new closer. They picked up Kenley Jansen from the Dodgers. So they're dangerous. The Phillies are more dangerous. I know you mentioned Kyle Schwarber, but we can't forget Nick Castellanos, who tore it up in Cincinnati each of the last 2 seasons. He's now a Philadelphia Philly, and with the the biggest knock on him, his defense was always rotten, but what does that matter now that the designated hitter is now in the National League? The Mets, if you would have asked me this question a month ago, I would have told you the Mets were the front runner. But DeGrom is going to miss significant time, they said, and now Scherzer is unlikely to be on the active roster opening day because he has a hamstring issue. So that leaves the Mets, and the Mets, I would say on paper, if fully healthy, have the most dangerous rotation in baseball. Of course, DeGrom, Scherzer, Bassett, Taijuan Walker, and Carlos Carrasco. Now that drastically changes. And my worst fear is going to be realized. David Peterson will probably be in the rotation to start the season, which is disastrous for me. Also, there's a lot of, despite all these offseason acquisitions, the Mets didn't really get a superstar in there other than Scherzer. They don't have an offensive superstar in their lineup. They went and got Starling Marte. They went again and got Eduardo Escobar and Mark Canha. But none of those guys put fear in the hearts of any pitchers. Maybe Starling Marte. But the others, no. The Washington Nationals, they're a bunch of young kids on that team. They did add Nelson Cruz, but I don't know how much Nelson Cruz is going to help that. Probably a veteran presence in the clubhouse. That's about it. The Miami Marlins might actually finish 4th instead of 5th. The Marlins have a lot to. They have a lot to. They have a lot that was promising towards the end of last season. Of course, their young third baseman Jazz Chisholm is a very exciting player to watch. Even though he's not a Met, he's become a personal favorite of mine. Again, Jorge Soler is in Miami now. So that's somebody to look out for. And then how can we forget the pitching? Sandy Alcantara. He's turned in a bunch of memorable performances over the last season. You can't count him out. And of course, the veterans there, Brian Anderson, Miguel Rojas. So the Marlins might they're not going to contend or even pose a threat to win the division, but they might scoot by in 4th and have the Nationals in the cellar. But I think it's the Braves division to lose. Honestly, when it comes down to playoffs, I see both the Braves and the Phillies getting in, if you can believe that or not. I believe, even though with the moves that the Braves made, and sorry for being long-winded, but I feel like the Phillies have the most dangerous 1 through 8 in the NL East.
Yeah, you could argue they have a better lineup. To your point about the Marlins, yes, they do have the young talent, but I would argue there's a reason that Derek Jeter said, I don't want any part of this. And obviously, you can talk about back in the day when the Marlins had probably the best young roster in all baseball: Christian Yelich, Marcell Ozuna, Giancarlo Stanton, and they just completely blew it. So I can't say I had that much faith in them to right those wrongs. Mike, what's your reaction to my NL East standings?
I think this is right now a 3-team race for the division. Depending on what happens with Jacob deGrom, I do think it's between the Braves, the Phillies, and the Mets. But I do think the Braves right now are the front runner. As repeat champions, I actually think they got better from last year. I think people are underestimating the reacquisition. I'm going to call it that because it's almost like offseason moves in itself, of Mike Soroka and Ronald Acuna, who did not play a lick last year. So I think those are two big guys that can come in and make an impact right away, a serious impact right away. Matt Olson is a legitimate stud. So I'm really liking what Atlanta is putting together. I'm really worried about Phillies defense and their deep end of their pitching staff. I think Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola are going to be fine, but I think once you get past that, I think you're really starting to look thin. They don't really have much as far as young talent that could either come up and improve the rotation or bail them out in certain spots. So I'm a little worried about the Phillies. I think they're probably a borderline playoff team at this point. I'm with Alfred. I think at full strength, the Mets are probably the favorite to win the division. I really do. They had an unreal offseason in my mind. I think people underestimate the acquisition of Eduardo Escobar more than anything else in the world. That guy rakes. Okay. Eduardo Escobar can really hit the ball. And, bringing guys in like Starling Marte, it balances out the lineup a little bit. If you get a bounce back from Francisco Lindor, I think this could be a really serious lineup. To be honest, Alfred, and maybe you could explain this to me, I have no idea why they didn't take the trade with San Diego yesterday. I thought that would have been an absolute steal for them, adding guys like Paddock and Emilio Pagan to that pitching staff that I think could make an impact right away. Why wouldn't they take that trade, Alfred? Is there something I'm missing there?
So to answer that question, and it's funny because Bryson and I actually texted about it yesterday. Eric Hosmer has a wrinkle in his contract that says should the Padres trade him, the next team he goes to, he will have a no trade clause. Now, Eric Hosmer's contract is not the most ideal contract. Back when he left Kansas City to go to the Padres, they gave him all that money because he was a World Series hero, and he hasn't really lived up to that billing. And giving up somebody like Dominic Smith, while yes, he did struggle last year, to trade him for a guy whose offensive numbers have dipped each of the last 4 seasons, and he has a no trade clause, so you couldn't even get rid of him if you wanted to. Is a guy you can't sell. It was a bad deal. Honestly, and even if he didn't have the no trade clause, I wouldn't have wanted Eric Hosmer. Chris Paddock, okay. Emilio Pagan, yes. But not with that no trade clause. I think Dominic Smith is worth a little bit more than that.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted a Met fan perspective on that because I'm looking at that thing and I'm like, all right, this is a no-brainer. For Dom Smith, you get because I was looking at it like Eric Hosmer's whatever, but you're getting 2 impact arms that I think can really help. But again, continuing with the division, I think Washington and Miami are both, and before I said Jorge Soler was a Kansas City Royal. He's a Miami Marlin. I forgot which bottom feeder he was on, but. Washington and Miami, I think, are definitely at the bottom of this division. I think they're not even close. I think what you have right here, Bryson, pretty much a 12-game spread between the Mets and Washington is about what we should expect between 3rd and 4th place in this division. So I'm not sure I disagree with what you've got right now. I think Atlanta is clearly the front runner. I was really worried that when they lost Freddie Freeman, and I get that they brought in Matt Olson, but I was really underestimating how dangerous this lineup looks, especially with Acuna coming in and Marcell Ozuna coming in. I mean, 1 through 9, they've got legitimate bats in this lineup. They really don't have a soft spot. So I like Atlanta to win the division. The Phillies and the Mets, depending on health, I think are going to be fighting for that number 2. But it also wouldn't surprise me if 3 playoff teams came out of this division. It really wouldn't, because these are the Mets, the Phillies, and the Braves are all going to be around 90 plus, maybe even 95 plus wins, at least from the Braves perspective. So I think you got it right here, Bryson. I mean, you can argue who finishes 4th and 5th between the Marlins and the Nationals, but that's splitting hairs for me. And honestly, who cares? So Atlanta, Philly, Mets. I think you've pretty much got it.
Yeah, and you made a good point. I forgot to bring this up about the Phillies. I think they were one of the 5 worst teams defensively last year. I mean, they were atrocious, especially in the outfield. So I think you look at that with the Mets. And I've been trying to sell Alfred a little bit. It's funny. He and shout out to Barry Grant Jr., another Mets fan. They argued all last season about Francisco Lindor and Alfred famously on the Metropolitan Report all the time at Citi Field. He'll take a picture of the jumbotron. He'll say the $340 million man. I think he's going to pay dividends on that this year, Alfred. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. I think you get maybe not to this degree, but sorry to bring back bad regular season memories for you, Mike. But that Sunday night game where Francisco Lindor just went off, I think he hit like 3 bombs that night, and basically single-handedly won that game for the Mets in what was an emotional game. Yeah, you were at that game. So I think you're a little low on Lindor. I think he's going to have a bounce-back year.
If I may chime in and add real quickly, as a Met fan personally, too many question marks on the roster is why I don't have them as even a second. And again, Bryson, you and I talked about it a couple of days ago. Robinson Cano is back now. We don't know if he's going to be the typical aged veteran who will probably hit for maybe 200 the most. The outfield is crowded. Where do Dom Smith and Jeff McNeil figure into things? Where does J.D. Davis, who's barely played all spring, figure into things? And if a guy can't even get reps in spring training, that should tell you something. So so many questions on this roster. It's got me scared, literally.
I feel you. I understand where you're coming from. Let's transition now to the NL Central, which is very interesting. I'm going to surprise you guys. I do think the Cardinals are underrated. I do think they're a wild card team. I like Milwaukee. I've always liked Milwaukee because I think their bullpen is unbelievable. You look at the guys they added. My man Hunter Renfroe from the Red Sox. You look at guys like obviously Christian Yelich. Can he regain that MVP form that he was just a few years ago? There's more questions than answers. Obviously, Willie Adames, who they got last year from the Tampa Bay Rays. But I think the pitching's unbelievable. I think that can carry you through the regular season. And it just seems like every September, somehow, some way, that the Brewers are in the running. So I guess I'll start with you, Mike. What's your thoughts on? Well, actually, before I ask your thoughts, let me go through the rest of the division. The Cardinals, I do think, are a wild card team. You look at obviously they went on that tear in September, winning 21 games or something like that in a row. This is sort of a farewell tour for three guys. For the Cardinals. So I think that will maybe derail a little bit, maybe be more of a ceremonial season, if you will, than one where they're trying to contend to a certain degree. The Reds absolutely got worse in the offseason. The only reason I had them winning 78 games is just to put them over the Cubs, who's spent big in the offseason for whatever reason, even though it seems like they're in a complete rebuild, unloading that 2016 title team. And then the Pirates, although they have some good young prospects, are not even close to contention. So, Mike, now go ahead. What's your thoughts on the Central?
I agree. I think the Brewers and St. Louis are going to be the top two teams in the division. I think the thing that would win the Brewers the division is the top three in their rotation. I mean, they have quite possibly the best top three in baseball. I mean, maybe excluding the Mets, but Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta is a ridiculous 1-2-3. It just is. And they're all self-developed, too, which is unbelievable what they've been able to do there. My questions with Milwaukee is, are they going to be able to hit enough? Is Yelich going to get back to what he was a couple of years ago? Are they going to get reliable at-bats out of guys like Lorenzo Cain, guys like Keston Hiura? Like some of these guys, they really they got to fulfill their, they got to fill their shoes here. I like some of the young guys they have. I like Willie Adames. I like guys like that. But at the same time, if pitching is going to carry this team, they have a great bullpen, Devin Williams, Josh Hader, guys like that. So if anything's going to win them this division, it's going to be through their pitching staff. I think I like St. Louis in this division. I really think this is a good roster. If their pitching does hold up, they're almost the exact opposite. If they need their pitching to hold up, they need guys like Flaherty and Adam Wainwright and Miles Mikolas and guys like that. They really need those guys to kind of step up and make sure they've got something there. I think the back end of their bullpen is very, very good. Getting Jordan Hicks back, I think, is a big deal. Adding him to the bullpen with Gallegos, I think that's a really, really solid get back right there. I think, as far as the bottom of the division goes, I think Pittsburgh's probably in last. I think I might like the Cubs a little bit more than Cincinnati, like maybe a little. But again, it's another one of these splitting hairs situations, separated by a game or two. Cincinnati, I really didn't think they were in a position to have to sell out everybody. But, I guess that's the decision they made for their franchise, how, what they could do to, I don't know, betterment themselves for the future, or maybe something else that's a little bit more controversial. But I think you're pretty close here. I mean, I would probably switch the Cardinals and the Brewers. I would probably switch the Cubs and the Reds. But other than that, I think I'm okay with this. You're in the right ballpark here. Pun totally intended.
Yeah, completely intended. It's baseball season, dang it. All right, go ahead, Alfred.
I think the Cardinals win this division. While I do agree with Mike that Milwaukee's rotation is dangerous, Milwaukee is a team that they have I don't believe in their offense whatsoever. I think Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain both have seen their best days come and go. Willie Adames was great in Tampa. He did turn it around after he was traded last season to the Brewers, but I just don't believe in them. Keston Hiura had a bad year last year. He's got to bounce back. I find it difficult to back them. It's really a two-team division. The Cardinals, mind you, let's not forget what the Cardinals did last season. Nobody expected them to make the playoffs. They mathematically had the hardest road out of any team in that wild card contention to make it, and they made it. I think they won 13 straight games at one point. I don't think the farewell tour of Wainwright, Yadi Molina, and Pujols will have any effect on them because they still have Harrison Bader. They still have Dylan Carlson. They still have Paul DeYoung. They've got a bunch of Tyler O'Neill. They've got a bunch of amazing talent, young guys that want to win. I do think that Drew Miller retiring hurts their bullpen just a little bit. But when you get guys like Jordan Hicks and Giovanni Gallegos and Alex Reyes, who was an all-star last season, all coming back, that's going to make up for the loss of one guy. As far as the Reds, the Cubs, and the Pirates go, all three teams that are in rebuilding. Like I agree with Mike, I didn't think the Reds had to sell the farm because they had a promising. When you look at the roster last year, they had Castellanos, Suarez, Aristides Aquino, Tucker Barnhart, Jesse Winker. They could have been something this year if they'd have kept that core together. But the Cubs, we knew that they're going to be in for a long rebuild once they sold the farm at the trade deadline last season. And the Pirates are the Pirates. That team just has to gel for maybe the next 8 years before they amount to anything. Ke'Bryan Hayes is a heck of a talent. I think he's going to end up at one point, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're going to say that he's the best third baseman in all of baseball. But they'll be the punching bag of the National League period next to the Diamondbacks. But I think this is the Cardinals division. I see the Brewers are going to have strong pitching performances, but you can have your pitchers can throw no hitters, but what good is it if your offense can't put up any runs?
It's kind of the story. I mean, I hate to bring this up for you, Alfred. It's kind of the story of the Mets last year in a way. And that could possibly be what derails the Brewers. And I think both of you make a great point. Like they really are, both the Brewers and the Cardinals are sort of the opposite of one another. So it is a division that could come down the wire. Maybe I'm overrating the Brewers a little bit, having it 95 wins. But I think it's going to come down to the wire. Transitioning now to the NL West, probably the most obvious division in baseball, and that'd be the Los Angeles Dodgers, the only team I have winning 100 games this season. I got them going 104-58, followed by the Giants, Padres, Rockies, and of course, I would argue the worst team in baseball, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Starting with the Dodgers, I mean, what can you say about their offseason? Yes, you lose Max Scherzer, but you bring in Freddie Freeman. You still got Walker Buehler, who I've been a fan of since he was at Vanderbilt. You obviously Clayton Kershaw and Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger. You got 3 MVPs in the lineup. I said on the show when the Freddie Freeman deal went down, and before we continue on the rest of the division, I'd like to get both of y'all's thoughts on this. I said on the show that it's probably, in my view, the greatest 1 through 9 lineup since the Big Red Machine. It is stacked. What's your thoughts on that, Alfred? No, I know the baseball historian that you are. What's sort of your thoughts?
I kind of have to agree with you. On paper, yeah, they're scary. Now, I know at the top of the show I said that the Dodgers, in my opinion, are the most overrated team. That's because in the postseason, a lot of their biggest bats forget how to hit. They get all this regular season glory, but it's like they get timid in the postseason. But as far as on paper, this 1 through 9, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Max Muncy, all there. I mean, I do feel that the loss of Corey Seager is gonna be felt. I also feel that the loss of AJ Pollock is gonna be felt. But when you lose Kenley Jansen, you had to make a move to get Craig Kimbrell, so I get it. But I do think they win this division. When you get to the other teams, I'll give you my thoughts on your standings prediction. But I do think this is the Dodgers division.
And before I go to you, Mike, real quick, think about something else that even when those bats get cold, you still have guys who have been great in the postseason, guys like Justin Turner, Trey Turner, Chris Taylor, who's had, monster postseason moments going back to 2017 in the World Series. Mike, what's your thoughts on my comparison to the Big Red Machine?
Yeah, I think it's probably on paper, like we keep saying, on paper, the scariest lineup since then. I mean, it feels like it's murderer's row. It's unbelievable what they've been able to put together. And I think that the Braves deserve a ton of credit for allowing the Dodgers to do this, and so do the Washington Nationals. I mean, the fact that the Washington Nationals gave up Max Scherzer and Trey Turner both in the same trade last year, I mean, that blows my mind. And the Dodgers gave up a lot, but still, so did the Nationals. It felt like this is a very, very scary lineup. And I agree. I think that Corey Seager offsets Freddie Freeman maybe a little bit. I like Freddie Freeman more, probably way more. But, losing A.J. Pollock, what do? You inject Gavin Lux into that lineup instead and move Chris Taylor to left field or something like that? I mean, I really think this is just they're going to score a million runs this year. They're going to hit a ton of home runs. I mean, if you really think about it, this is a seriously balanced lineup. They get on base a ton. They can steal bases. I mean, it's just there really isn't a weakness here. They've got lefty and righty bats all throughout the lineup. I don't know. It makes me sick.
No, they're back. And what's also, I mean, I guess something that you could throw in, maybe I'm overselling this a bit, but the pressure of the long championship drought, that's gone. So it's not like that's going to be hanging over their heads, obviously them winning it all in 2020. But after the Dodgers, I got a pretty substantial gap, a 13-game gap going with the San Francisco Giants, Padres, Rockies, Diamondbacks. Alfred, I know you hate the Giants. I know neither of us bought the Giants last year, having the best record in baseball, finishing just a game over the Dodgers. But look, I look at the fact that they got Jock Peterson. They've got guys like, Crawford, who's been there forever, and so on and so forth. And obviously Mike Yastrzemski. I think the young talent they have, the rotation is still good. I got the Giants nabbing a wild card spot. I had the Padres, especially, adding the new manager, possibly, contending for that wild card spot, but losing Fernando Tatis to start the year is a devastating blow. The Rockies, the one thing I'll say about the Rockies is probably the most surprising in terms of head scratch, I guess is the better term to use. Free agent signing was Chris Bryant going to the Colorado Rockies. I guess he figures I've got my ring, might as well get my money and pad my stats in, obviously in the altitude here. And then the Diamondbacks again are just atrocious. So, Mike, what's your thoughts on my NL West standings?
I think you've got it right. I agree with you. I think Chris Bryant was a very odd signing. And I think he'll discover quickly exactly why everybody hates it there. But I do think that the Dodgers are going to be the team that has probably the best record in baseball. They've got a crazy rotation. I think their bullpen could use a little bit of help. Losing Kenley Jansen, I think, is a big deal. But I do think that this Dodger team is probably the best one that we've seen in recent years, especially with the addition of Freddie Freeman, which, again, as a Yankee fan, makes me absolutely sick. I wanted Freddie Freeman more than anything in the world. I wanted him in the worst way to get in the Bronx. But I agree. I think the Giants are probably in second place here. And San Diego at this point is a team that, though looks pretty good on paper, they just traded for Sean Manaea today. They've got a very strong rotation, but they also have health concerns, and I think that they've got a bunch of question marks in their lineup. Manny Machado has kind of underwhelmed recently. Fernando Tatis going to be out for whatever it is, 6-7 weeks, whatever his timetable is. You add Luke Voit, who, again, knowing him from him being in the Bronx, he's going to add some power, but he's going to hit 240. So, I think the Padres do have some question marks here. And then Arizona is going to be embarrassingly bad. I do think Colorado is going to take a big step back. They're going to be I agree with you. They're going to be a 70, 75 win team, something around there. But the Dodgers, I think, could win anywhere up between, 105, 110 games. I think this is going to be a scary, scary Dodger team. They're going to be the focus of this division. The Padres, I think, missed the playoffs by a little bit. The Giants, I think, probably sneak in, because you have to think, you look at this Giants roster and it's just like nothing really excites you. They played a good brand of baseball last year. If there's a fluke candidate, I'm sure it's them. But at the same time, this is a brand of baseball that they play that I think is kind of rare in today's game. They play with a ton of heart. This is a very unconventional team. This is not a 3 true outcomes kind of team. So I think it's really interesting here. I think you've got it right, though. Dodgers, Giants, Padres, Rockies, and Diamondbacks is pretty much what I have as well. I think you've got it right here, Bryson. I think the Dodgers are probably the World Series favorite at this point.
All right, Alfred, your thoughts on the rest of the division?
I think you have it right. Colorado, Chris Bryant, he has a World Series ring already. I guess he has nothing left to prove. He went there for the money. Like Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado before him, he'll eventually want out before his contract expires. It's funny because even fringe guys like Raimel Tapia wanted out of Colorado. But Arizona is probably what I like to call the stench of baseball. They won't be good anytime soon. They have literally, outside of Ketel Marte, Arizona, the Diamondbacks have nothing to brag about or be proud about. I'm gonna even say this now, and you can probably play the recording back when the trade deadline comes. But Ketel Marte probably won't even be there by the time the trade deadline has come and gone. The Giants, my biggest question mark now, they did improve their rotation. They did get Carlos Rodon, but they lose Kevin Gossman. So that balances itself out. I think the biggest way they're affected is the retirement of Buster Posey. Joey Bart is supposed to be like the next great, outside of Adley Rutschman, who's a prospect for the Orioles. Joey Bart is supposed to be the next big name catcher. So we'll see how he does in his first season, where he's going to be the everyday catcher for the San Francisco Giants. I mean, they still have Belt, they still have Crawford, they still have Longoria, Yastrzemski, a lot of the pieces that made them successful. They did not re-sign Johnny Cueto, which was very surprising to me. But since he was another integral part of their rotation last season, but honestly, I don't even give them 91 games. I have them as like an 85, 86 win team. Really? And then the Padres, to agree with Mike, Manny Machado has not lived up to that $300 million contract that he was given at the start of the 2019 season. He's not the same Manny Machado that was in Baltimore or even the Dodgers. And then they have a lot of question marks with that rotation. Can the rotation stay healthy? Mike Clevenger does come back for the Padres this season. He hasn't pitched in a very, very long time due to injuries. He missed all of last season, so it remains to be seen what Mike Clevenger could accomplish. Yu Darvish is Yu Darvish. Enough said about that, but too many question marks. And like Mike said, health is not something, and I've said this on the Metropolitan Report plenty of times last season. Health is not something that you can teach or develop. Health just comes at you and happens. So it's either you have a team that stays healthy most of the year, or you have a team that's beaten down by lack of health. And I think the lack of health is going to be the Padres' Achilles heel.
Yeah, and the same, it was their Achilles heel last season. I mean, they were, I think in the first half of the season, they were competing with the Dodgers and the Giants for that NL West, and then they had the collapse of collapses in the second half from after the end of the All-Star break on to the end of the season. I mean, obviously, something about, I hate that we're even spending time on Arizona, but people seem to forget that they lost 110 games last season. Like it's crazy. One division has by far, well, I wouldn't say by far the best team in baseball, but I would say clearly the best team in baseball, and the worst. Again, I'm higher on the Giants than you are, Alfred, for the simple fact that, yes, they do lose Buster Posey, which, not just behind the plate, but in the clubhouse. That's a big loss of leadership there. And obviously the young prospect coming out, that's a tough job replacing, three-time champion. But yeah, I got the Giants nabbing a wild card spot. And that's where I see the West shaking out. So, and I didn't get the graphic ready. But basically my playoff teams in the two leagues in the American League, let's see. So I would have in order the Astros, White Sox, Red Sox. Let's see, I think then it would go Mariners and Rays would be my five playoff teams in the AL. And then the NL, I would go Dodgers, Brewers, Braves, and then followed up by the Cardinals and Giants. So those are my five playoff teams. But I don't know. Before we move on to awards and playoff predictions, what's y'all's five playoff teams? Starting with you, Alfred.
Well, it's actually they expanded in the CBA to 12 teams this season.
My bad.
No, all good. But I would say the three division winners. I'm gonna go Braves. I'm gonna go Cardinals. I'm gonna go Dodgers. And then the three wild cards. This pains me to do this, but I've got the Phillies. I've got the Giants, and by some miracle of God, the Mets.
So you have them getting in.
Yeah, I got them getting in. As far as the AL goes, I think the Yankees are going to win that division. I I don't know. I know that spring training is not indicative of anything, but they look to be in mid-season form. They're pitching, and again, I think that they robbed the Mets today because they ended up getting Miguel Castro from us. So, and I like Miguel Castro a lot. So they just bolstered their bullpen. Pitching has always been a question mark for the Yankees, but we know they can hit. It's just will the arms show up? But I have them winning the AL East. I've got the White Sox winning the Central. In the West, I have the Astros. And then the three wild card teams. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna say the Mariners get in this year. I'm gonna say the Red Sox, and I'm gonna say the Blue Jays.
Okay, what about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think as far as the American League goes, I think it's going to be the Blue Jays in the American League East. It'll be the White Sox in Houston. And as far as why you got me on the spot here, I have nothing written down. I've got nothing. But I think more than likely you're going to see the Mariners in the playoffs, and then you're going to get two more East teams. Whether that's going to be the Yankees, Yankees and Rays, or Yankees and Red Sox, or Red Sox and Rays. I think that's what you're going to look at. If it were me, I would say Blue Jays, White Sox, Astros, with the Yankees, Tampa, and Seattle making the playoffs as well. And then I guess the National League, Atlanta, I guess in no particular order, Atlanta, St. Louis, the Dodgers. I would go same thing, kind of the same thing. Giants, and I will go Phillies and Mets. I really think that if the Mets get healthy, they're legitimate. And if you can have DeGrom and Scherzer back by the end of the year, by the time the postseason comes around and they get into the playoffs, you don't want to play the Mets in the playoffs, man. I mean, you've got two of the top 3 or 4 starting pitchers in all of baseball at the top of that rotation. So I'm going to give the Mets a nod here for the playoffs, I think.
All right. I see where you're coming from, and obviously they also got there's no question a managerial upgrade in Buck Showalter without a shadow of a doubt. So let's do the awards. So for my AL MVP, and this makes me want to puke when I think about it, but I'm going to take Jose Altuve to win AL MVP. I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna regain that 2017 cheating form. Who's your AL MVP, Alfred?
I'm gonna go. He resides in the chambers in the Bronx. I'm gonna go with Mr. Judge.
Okay.
I think Aaron Judge is gonna take the AL MVP by storm. I do, however, will say this: I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will push him to the end of the season. So, okay. Guerrero, don't forget, Vladdy Jr. last season was making a case for it until the Blue Jays started falling off. But I think, especially the way he's looked in spring training this year, if he starts off the season like that, Aaron Judge will be phenomenal.
All right, what about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I would love that more than anything in the world. And I do think Aaron Judge is going to get close because he is really cutting down on strikeouts. He's putting the ball in play more. He still walks a ton. He's going to hit 45 bombs. I think he's legit, but I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. might be the best hitter in all of baseball. I think he could hit 330 with 40, 45 home runs and driving 120 RBIs. He's just going to be unbelievable this year, and he's going to anchor such a lineup where that Blue Jay lineup is going to be so strong this year. You're going to have to pitch to him. I mean, seriously, you can't pitch around Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because you got Bo Bichette hitting above him and Teoscar Hernandez hitting below him. There's nothing you can do about that. So I think Vladdy Jr. probably is going to have – I would even go as far to say I think we could see Vladdy Jr. have a historic offensive season this year. I really believe that.
Okay. So historic, are we talking 330 with – I don't know, 45 jacks or so?
It wouldn't surprise me if he hit in the mid 300s and hit 50 home runs. It would surprise me.
I mean, he's got
120 ribbies probably.
Oh, easy.
120 RBI.
No, that wouldn't surprise me at all. He's shown the talent since he came into baseball or into Major League Baseball. My AL MVP, I'm going to go with the guy who's going to have the comeback story of the year. I'm going to go with Ronald Acuna. I think he's going to be the driving force for the Braves offense this year. I think it's going to be after this season is over, regardless if the Braves win or not. I think people are going to be having that conversation like, man, if he doesn't get hurt in 2021, how much more dominant would the Braves have been en route to a 2021 championship? I'll start with you, Mike. Who's your NL MVP?
Freddie Freeman. For the same reason that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to win MVP, that lineup in Los Angeles is going to be so strong, you're going to have to pitch to him. You know what I mean? You can't pitch around him. You've got Mookie Betts hitting on top of him or Trey Turner, and right below him you got Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, whatever. There's no way around him. And I think that Freddie Freeman is going to find comfort in Los Angeles. I think he's going to want to prove Atlanta wrong for picking Matt Olson over him. And just to be honest with you, I think Freddie Freeman over the years has become one of the more forgotten about players just because he's almost just penciled in as one of the better hitters in baseball. All these young guys came up and people forget that Freddie Freeman at 30, how old is he, Alfred? He's 32.
32,
I mean, dude, this guy, every time he's at the plate, the guy's just a bona fide, unbelievable hitter, and he has been his entire career. It pains me because I wanted him here, but I think he's going to win it. I think he's going to win MVP or at least get really close to MVP in Los Angeles.
And to Mike's point, it was only 2 seasons ago he was the NL MVP.
You're right.
So,
He was in the condensed season. Yeah, he was unbelievable. So what's your thoughts? Who's your NL MVP, Alfred? You're our National League guy.
Picking a dark horse, and there's no bias in this pick, but I think my man Peter Alonso will make a name for himself beyond just a home run hitter this season.
Wow.
He's having a good camp. He's not swinging at pitches above his helmet that I've seen so far. So if he can just up the walks and because his average, like I've been saying, 250 is the new 300 nowadays, and the guy historically hits 265. So if he can get back to form, 50 home runs, maybe 45. I know he's more than capable of getting at least 100 RBI. So I definitely could see Pete Alonso as the NL MVP. And it's not far-fetched because nobody expected Bryce Harper to get it last year.
No.
Especially playing for the Phillies. And Bryce Harper had his first half last year stunk. It was based off his second half merit. So I definitely could see Pete Alonso, and especially because, he came out in the media last year and said he's the best power hitter on the planet. So I think he's going to try to back that up this year.
Okay. I really thought you were about to do the biggest 180 in the history of carving it up and go with Francisco Lindor. When you said
I've got to see more from him
when you said there's no bias, I'm like, oh my goodness, he's really gonna no. But Pete Alonso, you know what? That's definitely a dark horse pick without a question. I haven't seen any outlet predict. I haven't seen outlet predict the Mets to win any award except for my National League Cy Young winner. I'm going to go with Max Scherzer to win it. I think he's going to be called upon to certainly a much bigger role with Jacob deGrom out. I already said Shane Bieber's my AL Cy Young. So, Mike, give me your National League Cy Young winner.
Ooh, this is tough. See, I've got nothing prepared, so I'm going everything off the dome right now. I would do Alfred first. I'm sure he's more
okay.
prepared.
Alfred.
I'm going with Walker Buehler.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Walker Buehler because it seems that each season that has gone by, the last 3 seasons, Walker Buehler has been more than prepared, more than ready. No offense to Clayton Kershaw, future Hall of Famer, but I think Walker Buehler is now the ace of this rotation in LA.
Yes.
And I think this is his year to take over by storm.
All right.
I think I may have to go dark horse on this because, I don't think this is a set in stone pick. I don't think there's a clear cut guy who's a front runner for me. But one of the guys that I really like in the fact that he came onto the scene last year is Logan Webb. That kid's a legitimate location first pitcher that staff relies on him. You know what I mean? The addition of Rodon is great. And they've got guys like Alex Wood and Anthony DeSclafani and guys like that. Matt Boyd they added. These are all decent middle of the rotation kind of arms. Maybe with the exception of Rodon, he's more of a number 2 guy. But Logan Webb, I think he's brand new. There's no tape on him. Listen, these location guys are so different in Major League Baseball today. I mean, hitters freeze up when they see a 91-mile-an-hour fastball that paints the outside corner, and it ain't 99 up at their chin. So I would say Logan Webb is an interesting guy to look for here. But I think, look, a lot of guys are going to be in this. I think it's good. You know, you can look at all three of the guys at the top of Milwaukee's rotation that could all do it. Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff. I think you can look at all those guys. Scherzer's definitely an obvious choice. Walker Buehler is definitely an obvious choice. I think another name to look out for is Zach Wheeler. But I'm going to say, for me, I'm going to take the dark horse. I'm going to take Logan Webb.
All right. So, again, I said the Guardians' only bright spot is going to be Shane Bieber because, as both of you pointed out, it is highly possible that, considering they're not in any way, shape, and form in contention, they could trade Jose Ramirez. I'll start with you again, Alfred. Who's your AL MVP? I was talking about Shane Bieber, obviously, being the bright spot for the Guardians. Who's your AL MVP?
Hate to go back to the evil empire, but Garrett Cole has something to prove. The guy, no, hey, listen, the guy's been getting hammered. They say he's only a regular season guy. I think he will. And I know, Bryson, you would probably agree with that sentiment.
Yes, I saw it firsthand as a Red Sox fan in the wild card game.
I think Garrett Cole is due for. He has that chip on his shoulder. He signed that 10-year deal. He's gonna want to prove to the Yankee fans, because Yankee fans can be very brutal. So he's gonna want to prove to the faithful in the Bronx that he's worth the investment. So I can see him dominating this season.
Okay.
Alfred likes the Yankees this year, man. I am all in on this.
I'm so disappointed in you, Alfred.
Let's go.
Okay, Mike, who's your American League Cy Young winner?
I so badly want to take Garrett Cole because I think in general he's probably the best pitcher in the American League. But I look at that division, and you have to play the Red Sox a ton. You have to play Tampa a ton. You got to play Toronto a ton. Yeah, right. It's just it is going to be a gauntlet going through that division. I think he'll have a very, very good year because, like what Alfred said, Garrett Cole has something to prove this year. Okay, the whole spider tack thing. Now, whether you think that was, part of his success or it wasn't, it probably was. But even regardless, he's a top 5 pitcher in baseball. And he's a top 5 pitcher in baseball that now has something to get pissed about. You know what I mean? So I think that there's something there. I think the guy that's, at least for me, this is going to be the American League Cy Young. It's unfortunate, but I think my favorite right now is Justin Verlander. I think that if he comes back strong, this is another guy who the staff relies on him. Okay. We have some question marks in that staff. Luis Garcia, guys like Jose Urquidy and Framber Valdez, and guys like these are all guys that have put together decent starts, but they are far from a sure thing. I think Justin Verlander, when healthy, is still one of the better pitchers in the game. You want to talk about a bounce back candidate. I think he's going to be a huge one. It wouldn't surprise me if Justin Verlander came out and lit the American League on fire.
Well, again, I think he's going to be the difference for the Astros winning 99 games this season, having the best record in the AL. So listen, if he's going to be what I think he's going to be, and I think what you think he's going to be, Mike, then the Astros are going to be in pretty good shape. Last one, we won't touch on Rookie of the Year. Let's do Manager of the Year. I will go in the American League because I think the Astros are going to have some success. I'm going to go Dusty Baker. I know obviously expectations are somewhat high for Houston. But I think if they do reach that sort of 100-game plateau, it's going to be really hard to shut him out of the mix. So, a guy who's came so close once again to his first World Series title. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he has the longest drought of any manager in history without winning a World Series. So I think at the very least this year he'll come away with the Manager of the Year. So I'll start with you, Alfred. Who do you have winning American League Manager of the Year?
I've got Tony La Russa, Chicago White Sox.
Okay.
Everybody was scratching their heads last season when the White Sox hired La Russa because they had no reason to fire the previous manager who got them to the playoffs. But Tony La Russa has proven, because and Bryson, you and I have talked about it, but a lot of people say, oh, the old school mentality of managers of yesteryear doesn't fit in with today's game, and there's unwritten rules and all this other type of stuff. But he did prove that he can lead a team, a young team of this generation into success, and I think he can only build upon that. I mean, that division is theirs for the taking, unless some unfortunate incident happens with injuries or what have you. But I think they're going to run roughshod over that AL Central division. And Tony La Russa, I think he's instilled a new swagger into these guys that they didn't have before.
Okay. All right. What about you, Mike?
I agree. I think it's Tony La Russa. I think that the discrepancy in that division is going to be legitimate. And the White Sox, like I said, I think the White Sox right now are probably the best team in the American League. That lineup is so young. And if you want to keep this in mind too, I feel like the trend now for manager of the year is who takes the team that has the youngest players and makes them the best team. So if you got guys like Eloy and guys like Luis Robert and all those guys in that lineup, you got some young guys, Lucas Giolito in the rotation. I think Tony L's probably going to be the favorite for that award. I do think that with all the crap that the Yankees have gone through this year, if the Yankees do end up winning the division or they end up on top of the American League, it would not surprise me. As much as people hate him, it would not surprise me if Aaron Boone got that award either.
That would be, can you imagine the story? That would be, the guy is almost guaranteed to get fired. Then he gets an extension. Then he wins, the manager of the year. That would be, man, that would be a story. Cause I thought his goose was cooked in New York.
Well, don't forget the National League manager of the year got fired and then got the award after last season, Mike Schultz for the Cardinals. So anything could happen.
Yeah. There's no justice in baseball, man. Mike Schultz shouldn't have gotten fired. That was silly.
No, especially how they finished down the stretch in September, winning all those games in a row to get them the wild card game. I'm going to go for my National League Manager of the Year. I'm going to go with Craig Counsell because I think he's going to have to be. I think for the Brewers to win the division, obviously, you think about the rotation, which, as we talked about, is going to have to be the driving force for them. I think if they beat St. Louis for the division, I think if they have the second best record in the National League, I'm going to go Craig Counsell to win that award. So I'll start with you this time, Mike. Your National League Manager of the Year.
I'm going to do Alfred I'm going to return the favor here. I'm going to say Buck Showalter. Listen, I think if the Mets can get healthy, I think they're the favorite for the division. I really do believe that. If they can have a healthy Max, if they get a bounce back from Lindor, if they have, get the season from Pete Alonso that they want to have. I mean, the potential of this Mets team, I think, is better than what we've seen in a bunch of recent years. And, I take a lot of credit for this. I'm going to toot my own horn for a minute because I think that I'm a very fair Yankee fan. I want the Mets to do well. I never root against the crosstown rival. I actually always root for them to have some somewhat success. But I do think that as this season progresses and if they can stay healthy, then they're going to be one of the top teams in the National League, and having that much of an improvement from what they had last year, I think you'd probably have to give it to Buck Showalter at that point if that happens.
Okay. What about you, Alfred?
If they can somehow make the playoffs, I think Joe Girardi gets the nod in Philly. Because for the last couple of years, the Phillies have had good lineups on paper. They've had good rotations on paper, but it's never materialized into anything in the real world. And then also, you got to look at the personalities he has to deal with. Castellanos has been proven to be a firecracker. Bryce Harper is near uncontrollable when his ego allows him to be. Then you got to deal with guys. You got to deal with guys like Didi Gregorius. So and then of course, big market team in Philadelphia. You got to contend with two of the other hardest hitting teams in all of the National League, save for the Dodgers. You got to deal with the Mets. You got to deal with the Braves. That division is not easy. So, and Girardi, of course, already a battle tested manager. He's already a World Series champion as a manager. But I think if he could get that Philly team with and handle guys like Gene Segura, young guys like Alec Bohm, I think he'll be in the running for NL Manager of the Year.
That's an underrated one, especially I think if they win the division, that'll be really hard to turn Girardi down. Okay, so I'm going to basically pull a college basketball stunt. I'm going to skip to the Final Four. I'm going to go with the ALCS and the NLCS. Who do I think is going to get there? And I think it's going to, well, I'll save the American League for just a second. Let's start with the National League because I think these are the two best teams left. I think we're going to end up with the Braves and the Dodgers, the defending champs going against the team who won it the year before. I think here's sort of my outlook on this series should it happen is for the Dodgers, what sunk them last year was injuries. And keep in mind the fact, too, Atlanta won the first two games in that series via walk-off. So even despite the Dodgers injuries and pretty much falling apart, especially in the rotation, the Braves were able to, barely able to skate by in that series. So with that all said and done, I would take the Dodgers to win in 6 games over Atlanta. Alfred, what if the National League Championship Series, Braves, Dodgers, once again, this would be 3 straight years now. Who would you take and why?
This is a tough one, but they're both powerhouses in their own right. You know what? I'm gonna go with the Dodgers only because the loss of Jorge Soler and hurts the Braves more than the loss of Corey Seager to the Dodgers, in my opinion.
That's the World Series MVP, without a question. Guido.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say Dodgers probably in 6. Listen, anything short of an NLCS appearance from the Dodgers this year with this roster would be a complete and utter failure. So I think the urgency for the Dodgers is definitely there. I would take the Dodgers in 6.
If they don't get to the NLCS, Dave Roberts is gone. that is it. It feels like he's in the hot seat every single year, but I feel like that would be a justifiable reason considering the lineup and considering the unbelievable rotation. So for the second time in 3 years, and what would that be? The fourth time in the last 6.
Yep.
The Dodgers would be in the World Series, which is not a controversial pick. I'm going to piss both of you off by my ALCS for the podcast audience. I'll let you hear the reaction. There you go.
No,
we're gonna get a Red Sox Astros. Here's I've already made my argument for Houston. I think they're gonna have the best record in the American League, so I've made my argument there. I think their rotation is going to surprise some people, especially with the return of Verlander. For my Red Sox, here's the argument I make: is you obviously add Trevor Story, you have Rafael Devers, who once again has just raked in spring training. JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts. You add Jackie Bradley Jr. barely hits 200. Most of the times he's sub 200, but he is a defensive demon in center field, which is I would think where they put him. You look at Kike Hernandez, who was the hottest player in the world up until midway through the ALCS, and keep in mind, could I make an argument, fellas, that Alex Cora is probably one of the 3 best managers in baseball? Could I say that?
Now you called Altuve a cheater earlier on. Cora was a cheater too.
He was a cheater. He was a cheater. I'm talking about the Red Sox now.
He's brought his cheating ways to Fenway.
Hey, zip it.
I'm going to be just as salty as Alfred on this one. I'm going to say nothing that Alex Cora has ever accomplished is legitimate.
Wow. Okay.
Even in his playing days, damn it.
This is terrible. This is awful, man. We're going to have to talk after the show, man. This is ridiculous. Okay. I don't have the courage of my conviction, though. If this were to happen, I would take Houston to win in 7 games. Only in 7 because the Red Sox went from the hottest team in the world to, I think they scored like 1 run, maybe 2 in the last, or I think they scored like 4 runs in the last 3 games combined, games 4 through 6. I'm telling you, I hate to say it, but I think this Astros team is poised for a big run in the postseason. If this were to happen, let's just say hypothetically, fellas, Mike, the result of this series would be what?
I would say Astros in 5. I really think that the Astros are a better team this year. And like I said, I think Boston, as for me, is considered, arguably the 4th best team in the division in the AL East. So I don't know. I'm the wrong person to ask. I do think the Red Sox are a good baseball team, but I do think the Astros have a leg up on this. I would take the Astros in 5 games.
What about you, Alfred?
if you would have asked me this question before you guys got Trevor's story, I would have said Houston. But I think the Red Sox would upset the Astros. I don't even think you could consider that an upset, to be honest with you.
I think it would be a pretty big upset just because I think the gap in rotation and certainly the gap in bullpen is pretty big. Obviously lineups, Boston's is better than Houston's. I think the Red Sox offense is going to carry them through. I think the fact that, look, the Red Sox, if we're going to go in the shot taking business, I'm going to take a shot at the Yankees here. The Red Sox, unlike the Yankees, are not wedded to analytics. Obviously, they use them, but they're not terrified to bunt if the situation calls for it, and they're not swinging for the fences every single go around. But I would still take Houston. So in the World Series, I predicted it last year. I was crossing my fingers that if my Red Sox didn't get there, that this would be the scenario. You guys don't know how bad I want an Astros-Dodgers World Series after what happened in 2017. Before I make my prediction, I'll start with you, Alfred. Astros, Dodgers, let's say we get it in the Fall Classic. You would take who?
Los Angeles.
In how many games?
I think they take it in 5.
Wow. Okay.
I think that the Dodgers were overpowered both lineup-wise and rotation-wise and bullpen-wise. They were overwhelmed, the Houston Astros.
Okay, what about you, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be Dodgers in 5. Because truth be told, I think the Braves would put up a better fight against the Dodgers than the Astros would. And I agree with Alfred. I think the Dodgers are so overpowering offensively. The Dodgers, I think, would win this series pretty handsomely.
Out of respect for Houston, I would take the Dodgers to win in 6 games. I'll give a little bit of credit to Dusty Baker. I'll say he's able to lead them to one that they really shouldn't get. I cannot honestly, I cannot see a scenario in which, if they're healthy, the Dodgers don't win the World Series, because you got to put it in perspective. You have to beat this team 4 times in 7 games. That's a big ask, and like I agree with both of you. I think Atlanta would put up more of a fight. I do think that they would make it a closer series, not necessarily in terms of the final score of the series, 4-2 in both cases, I think. But I think Atlanta would put up a better fight because of the rotation, because of the bullpen, and the lineup is no question scary even without Freddie Freeman. But that's my predictions for this season. I think we're in for a good one. Again, I did not think we'd be saying this a month ago, that we'd be having baseball this early. But I'll start with you, Mike. Any final thoughts on this and on the 2022 Major League Baseball regular season?
I agree. I think this is going to be a very exciting season. I think with something that I think is important to point out, and I was talking to our buddy Barry Grant Jr. Yesterday about this, is that I think because of the expanded playoffs, I think that this year's trade deadline could get nuts. Like, you're going to see a lot of teams that are in on a lot of players. And instead of having 2 or 3 teams in on a starting pitcher, you're going to have 6, 8 teams in on one guy, so Jeff Passan and John Heyman and Ken Rosenthal and all those guys, they are going to get way more busy this year than I think they have been in years past. I think this is going to be a very exciting year, man.
It's going to be fun. What about you, Alfred?
Before I give my my well wishes on this season, I do want to reaffirm my position that Commissioner Rob Manfred is still a doofus. But,
let's give that a standing ovation, ladies and gentlemen.
He likes the Yankees this year. Alfred likes the Yankees.
Yes, I do like the Yankees a lot this year for what I've seen in their camp. But I think this is going to be a good season. The main difference between this season and last season, mainly for the fan experience, if you guys remember, ballparks opening day last season was maybe 10-15% capacity unless you were in Texas to start opening day. This year, everybody's got full attendance. There's no limits on anything. A lot of the stupid rules from the last 2 years are gone, so doubleheaders are back to 9 innings apiece. We've got the DH in both leagues now. It's a shame they couldn't get rid of the runner on second to start extra innings, but you can't win them all. But I think this is going to be a very good year for baseball. I think it's going to, now that the BS of negotiating labor agreements is past us, I think this season is going to be a fun one.
I'm in total agree with the both of you. I think all three of our teams are going to be in the running for the postseason without a doubt, which is an exciting place to be as a fan. But hopefully those listening, I mean, unless you're like a Diamondbacks or an Orioles fan, hopefully those of you listening can say the same. But that is all the time we have for the 2022 Carving It Up Major League Baseball Opening Day show. Big thank you to you, Mike.
You were going to say the Mets preview show.
What's that?
You were going to say the Mets preview show. I heard the slip.
I did not. I promise you, I was not going to say that. We don't do that. We don't do that. But Alfred, appreciate you. Mike, appreciate you both coming on, and hope everybody has a great evening and a great 2022 MLB season. Stay safe out there. God bless you all.